Hello and welcome to week 3 in EDMA 5220. This week's focus will be digital storytelling. I want to begin by just describing what digital storytelling actually is. There is not necessarily a universal definition of it, but there are some things that are generally agreed upon. First off, the key theme is that digital storytelling really does combine the art of telling stories with the different types of media that can be incorporated into various projects, such as digital images, both those that are taken by the individual or graphics that are found online taken by other authors, either photos or drawings. Typically audio narration, text, there may be background music as well, and there's also the potential to incorporate actual motion media, although we're not going to focus on that application in our class project. The digital images themselves tend to be the primary area of focus in digital storytelling. So the selection of the images needs to be made with care. I don't think that the most effective digital stories are those in which a person has done a search in Google Images and found the 4 or 5 first images that appear and just put them into the project. Images are selected with care, especially since you're probably not going to use that many different images. The result of a digital story is the production of a movie file. So it can either be something that resides online somewhere, or it could be a standalone movie file that could be opened with an appropriate movie type of resource. And basically the topics are pretty limitless. The sky's the limit in terms of what teachers might come up with in terms of project assignments. And certainly there are multiple websites that are dedicated to allowing people to produce their own stories related to a variety of topics that are personally interesting to them. And one of the things that I wanted to emphasize is the idea of telling a story instead of just sharing information. So the idea of a digital story is that what's conveyed is not just a retelling of a historical event or a rehashing of a timeline or somebody's biography. There's personal meaning attached to it, and it is really the idea of telling the story, conveying the story, and really capturing the listener or viewer that is of importance. And I wanted to share a couple of examples with you. The first one is created by a teacher so that you can get that sense, and we'll talk in a minute about why a teacher might produce a digital story. And then I wanted to share one that was created by an actual student. So first, the teacher created story. I won't show all of it. You can see it online in the Blackboard website.
One of my students was commenting on how she felt another student in my class was prettier than she was because she happened to have lighter skin. As an African American woman with a darker complexion, I could easily understand the insecurity that this young child felt while looking at another person. If she only knew that this is an issue that has not only been played out in society, but also embedded in the history of our people. Willie Lynch was a slave owner in the West Indies who gave a speech in 1712 in the colony of Virginia. He was there to train slave owners on how to manage their property. Willie Lynch made several points in his speech to take the differences among slaves and make them bigger. One of those differences that he chose to highlight was the color of slave skin. You must use the dark-skinned slaves versus the light-skinned slaves, and the light-skinned slaves versus the dark-skinned slaves. Willie Lynch planned for these differences to keep slaves under control for 300 years. Willie Lynch did not know that slaves would be free 150 years later. He also didn't know how correct he was to make the assumption that 300 years later, African Americans would still be under control.
And here's a portion of a student example.
2 months ago, my husband, a soldier, left to fight for our country against the Japanese. He said he loved us both, my 5-year-old daughter and me. He told me he'd write to us and made me promise to write back. He told me that if anything happened to him, I needed to find a job. He said I was a strong woman and that I could take care of our child. I knew he was right, but the thought of going on without him broke my heart. I didn't know if it was the last time my child and I would see him. We cried as we watched him get on the plane. The last 2 months have been very hard. I miss my husband, and it's getting harder each day to make ends meet and keep food on the table at home. I decided I needed a job, and the U.S. government has been encouraging women to come to work for the military because there is a real shortage of men to fill these jobs since so many have become soldiers since the war started.
So even though you didn't see the full version of either one of these two videos, I do have the full links to both in Blackboard, where you can watch the rest if you want to. But I think it's enough to give you a sense of what could be done. Certainly the goal of giving voice and perspective beyond just simply sharing information about people or events becomes prominent in the selection of images and whatever other additional media content becomes very important as well. So in addition to these two examples, I do have a hyperlink to a website that can be searched by content area should you wish to look for more student-created examples of projects that have been constructed. There is a difference in terms of teacher-created stories versus student-created stories. In terms of what you might choose to create as a teacher or other educator, first of all, one of the reasons that you might incorporate digital stories is that you might use something you create to kind of set the stage for instruction or learning in your classroom. You might get it to interest the students in a topic or provide them with some background information prior to getting into the meat of a particular topic. You might also use a digital story to frame discussion or frame research that you might ask students to complete on their own, or perhaps you might use it purely to inform them about something that occurred. For those of you that are interested in the flipped learning model, certainly something that you create as a digital story could be accessible to students online so that they could view it at home or outside of the school day, and then they could convene in your classroom together where the discussion could occur or other activities could occur where they have done the viewing of that media as their homework. So that's certainly something to consider as well. In terms of student-created digital stories, as an alternative to more traditional forms of them to demonstrate their understanding, they could certainly create a project of some sort. So they wouldn't necessarily have to write a paper or take a test on something. And the value of doing that is that there is an opportunity for collaboration with others in the class, which offers a lot of additional support for their knowledge as well. Sharing their research about topics that perhaps you don't explore as a whole class. And then also I wanted to address just the 4 C's. These kind of projects do facilitate communication, they facilitate collaboration between students and between students and the teachers. Certainly there's a lot of creativity involved, and critical thinking is involved as well in their decisions about the content to include within their projects. There are definite benefits to students in terms of having them create digital stories, especially English learners. One of the things that is difficult for a lot of students is speaking in front of groups, whether it's formal or informal speaking, and the nature of digital stories means that they would be able to record their audio away from the main group so that they could not feel the need of being on stage quite as much. So it would maybe provide less anxiety for them than other kinds of class activities. It also gives students a chance to record something, listen to it, determine if it's acceptable to them, and re-record if they felt the need to do so, so that what's then forwarded as their final project is something that they really feel proud of and want to share with others. I've already talked a little bit about the creativity, and I will emphasize it here. There is a benefit to giving students a lot of leeway in terms of the outcomes for them to show their understanding. So digital stories can take on so many different flavors and identities for the students that really tap into their creative juices. In addition, the digital nature of these stories means that they can be easily shared with other people within the class, outside of the class, communities, parents, grandparents, and others. So instead of having an audience of just the teacher, as is traditional for a lot of projects, these digital stories do afford the opportunity for others to be involved as well. And maybe, especially for ELs, one of the most important elements of digital stories is that it does give them a voice. And by voice, I don't just mean that we hear them speak, but that we give them the opportunity to share something of themselves. Digital stories are supposed to be a reflection of the individual. They're supposed to be written in the first person. They're supposed to be reflective of perspectives and opinions and have personal pronouns in them. So the student is in a position in which he or she is being told that their contribution is valued, and that can be very empowering. There are a lot of different ways that digital stories can be incorporated into the curriculum, and as I said, there's a link in Blackboard with ideas or products that have already been constructed, but just some things to think about. You could have students create a virtual tour of someplace, either someplace they've been to or someplace that they've studied. You could have them construct it as a public service announcement that would be relative to something going on either locally or more broadly than that. A digital story could be used to simulate an interview with somebody potentially no longer living from their perspective. So it gives a little bit more character to something than just writing a narrative about an individual's life. You could use it to simulate a debate about a historical topic, to share perspectives of a controversial topic, or even retelling a story that somebody else has written, but doing so in a way in which the children's own artistic creations are used as the images instead of images from the book. And that might be especially useful for students at the kindergarten or first grade levels. You could also have students use a digital story to explain some type of process. And this is what makes it a viable curricular option for all content areas, including math and science. In the first class meeting, I showed you a document that was constructed in 2004, and I said that this was going to frame what we're doing in class because there are different levels of media use in classes. And so this particular type of project is something that could be constructed at the level 1, 2, 3, or 4 stages. It kind of depends on how much you wanted your students to contribute. Are they going to find their own images? Are they going to use images that you or somebody else have already compiled for them? Are they going to record their own audio? Are they going to write their own script or use something that you as an instructor have already written for them, and so on? So it gives you as a teacher the option of customizing the involvement of the students and media based on what they're capable of doing. But even at level 1, digital stories can be a very viable addition to the curriculum. As you produce your digital story for this class and reflect upon what you might have your students do at some point, I'd like you to kind of keep in mind a few ingredients for a successful digital story. First person is a very critical component, meaning that you're not just retelling an event. You're actually telling the story in first person. And that's something to really keep in mind. Make the reader believe that the story is real. Do that by telling it in the first person. And then similarly, make it personal. So help the reader understand why you selected this particular person, this event, this story. Why are you sharing this information? And that means you should use I, me, my, we, our, and so on. You should use personal pronouns when you are conveying the story to the viewer. The idea of a hook is really critical. You want the reader or listener to be involved in the story, to have an emotional connection to the story. So the idea of generating interest is really critical. So that can be done through the choice of images that you have, background music that you have. It can be done through the words that you choose, but you have to put all of those elements together in a way that really is going to interest the reader throughout. The idea of a digital story is something other than getting 100 images together and talking a little bit about each one. The idea is that you're using this platform in an efficient way to convey something important. So there's not going to be, at least in my class, and I hope when you have students create digital stories, you think this way as well. You don't have to have slides or 20 slide shows in order to create an effective digital story. You need to think very carefully about the words that you use and the images that you choose so that you can convey meaning in an efficient manner. People tend to lose interest if things get to be too long. So if you have something that's 90 seconds or 2 minutes and it effectively conveys what you want, then that's effective. So don't add things just for the sake of adding them. Add them because of how they contribute to the whole. The idea of drama is kind of related to some of the things I've touched on, but it's really using what you can to involve the reader and to make meaning and to generate interest. So the idea of the images that are selected, the narrative that you choose and so on becomes important and does contribute to the success of a digital story. And then lastly is what can the resource that you're using contribute to the product overall? Are there transitions that you can implement from slide to slide as you progress? Are there opportunities to add background music or other sounds? Are there things that you can add not just to add them, but because of how they might enhance the overall quality of the image? There are all kinds of different resources that you could choose to use to create digital stories. So I do have a table in Blackboard that we're going to visit just so I can talk briefly about some of the options. So here in the week 3 folder I have a table. It's kind of down inside the folder that lists a variety of different resources that could potentially be used to construct digital stories. The first is Google Slides, which is not one that I would recommend for your class project, but could be used for other reasons. The reason that I would not advise it for the class project is that currently Google Slides does not support audio narration. So you couldn't add that, and that it is a required component of your project in this class. But there are a lot of benefits to Google Slides. One, it does allow students to collaborate easily with each other and share their projects. It's a Google product, so it's easy to use and very intuitive, and you can add transitions, and so there's a lot of really good things to it. It just doesn't support audio right now. Animoto is another resource. There's a free version out there that allows you to construct 30 seconds of movie footage, which could include a lot of different images that you upload into it, and it does have a lot of background music available. But the 30-second limitation might be too much of a detriment to it. It does, and it also does not support audio narration, so you can't record your voice in that one as well. If you choose the paid version, it has a lot of templates and additional background music that you can incorporate into your projects, and it works really, really well if you, especially if you like to share personal photos as stories with family members. So it's not that expensive, but something that you might consider for that purpose. 30 Hands is another potential product. It is a free download that you can use on an iPad or iPhone, which makes it a very versatile product. And it does have some restrictions in terms of the overall length of the completed video. It does allow for audio recording, so that's a definite advantage of it. And if you choose to download it, you can download some in-program or in-app downloads to give you some additional functionality, like you can have it sync with Google Drive, which is a nice feature. Then the next one is called Explain Everything, where it's basically an interactive whiteboard. It allows you to upload images, and when the image is there, you can then talk about the images. You can move back and forth between the images, kind of like slides. You can add audio narration to it, which is a really nice feature as well. You can also include background music, which is a nice feature. It does work on multiple platforms, so you can download it to a desktop or run it off of a desktop, or you can use it on Chromes and iPads, iPhones, Android devices as well. So the cost of this one is not free, but it's really inexpensive. So depending on how you might want to use it, it might be a nice viable feature. Then Buncee is an application that syncs with your Google account. It's $20 a year for a regular classroom account, which allows you to manage all of the student accounts within your classroom. But it does allow you to record audio. The free version, so not the school portion of it, doesn't allow you to record audio, but you can sign up for a free 30-day trial of the classroom version, which would be enough for you to complete the assignment in this class if you want to. The two that I'm going to show you how to use in a separate video if you want to view them. Otherwise, they're both very intuitive to figure out on your own as well. One is called You Tell Story, and this is a web-based program that allows you to set up a free class account, and once you have a class account, you can manage all of the students within your class. So I've actually set it up that way for our class, and I have our login information as part of the week 3 task sheet. But it does allow you to record audio. You can also upload background music. The only big disadvantage that I see to this one is that it doesn't allow students to collaborate with each other via online sharing. So certainly if they were sitting next to each other, they could, but you can't share it in the way that you could share a document in Google Drive, for example. Another nice feature is that it does have transitions to or between slides. And then VoiceThread is the other one that I'm going to demo. I think it's another really intuitive resource to use. There is a free version available which gives you access to all the features. It just doesn't allow you to group things as a class. So I have paid for a higher ed class version which allows me to group things in a way where you can access only what I set for you to access, so all of the people who are part of a single class can view and comment on and edit what I've restricted them to. So if you wanted to collaborate with another student in the class, it can be set up in a way where you can do that. One person can create the account and set it so that you're sharing it with another person who has editing privileges. Another nice feature of VoiceThread is that it allows you to record audio through either a microphone, a webcam, or your smartphone, so you can actually call in your audio narration. It doesn't allow you to import background music, but there are ways around that as well without importing it in. And then the last three options that I list here are all options that are pure video editing options. Windows Movie Maker, which comes free on Windows machines, iMovie, which comes free on Macs, and YouTube, which is available online. We will work with YouTube later in the semester. If you want to use it now, you're welcome to do that. Basically, all of these options are going to result in a completed movie anyway, so whatever you use is fine. And if you want to use something other than what's on this list, you are more than welcome to do so. In terms of the actual project criteria, Week 3's task sheet does list everything in more detail, but you will need to have a title page at the beginning and a references page at the end. The references page must comply with APA formatting. Because whatever resource you're going to use is expecting you to upload image files, it means that you might need to create the title page in a program like Google Drawings or Pictochart or any of them that we talked about during week 1, or basically anything that allows you to save a file as a JPEG image or PNG image or another type of image file. So many of these resources don't really let you create a true title page or a reference page directly in them. You have to create someplace else and then import them. You need to have at least 6 content slides, meaning that each one of those slides has an image as a focus, and it would be supported with audio and text as well. And your story has to be a strong one. your voice or your perspective or your opinion has to emerge here. So I say tell the story. So don't just share the information. Tell it like a story. Get the hook in there. Make it appealing and interesting to the reader. So the rubric is also in Blackboard as well. So that's it for me. I hope that you learned about digital storytelling and that you're excited for the project that you're going to construct in this class, and also in terms of thinking about what you might have your students create as well. Please let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I will see you soon. Bye.